folks, welcome back to another Top 10 list done by yours truly, Sam Healey, all by my lonesome again. EmperorS4 is one of my favorite companies currently, right now. A lot of the games that they put out, while they're not very complex, they're not very, I guess you could say, always down my alley. I love the simplicity and the depth that comes with that simplicity. Usually most of their games are very easy to teach, and easy to play, but they have a lot of thought that goes on behind the scenes, thought that you have to put into your turn, and often that doesn't necessarily translate over to analysis paralysis problems. So that's another good thing that I like about it. Usually their games are light enough to where people don't feel like they need to put a lot of thought into their turn, but there is still a lot of thought that does have to go into their turn. So I like that simplistic yet deep simplistic nature that most of their games have. So I've played 10 of their games, so I thought I'd go ahead and rank them in order from what I consider to be my least favorite to my favorite game that EmperorS4 has to offer. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So my number 10 is a game called Crow's Overkill. Now I have to admit this probably wouldn't be on my list if I had played 11th game from EmperorS4, because I really don't like the theme of the game. It is still a decent game, but the theme is basically that there is a gentleman who has been out carousing all night, and he doesn't want to go home in the morning, and he knows that if the birds start singing, then he's going to have to leave and go home, and so he starts killing birds so that they don't make any noise so that he can stay. Yeah, very awkward theme. I don't really like the theme at all. The gameplay is okay. It's kind of a take that type game where you can make birds show up on other people's tableaus so that they have a harder time keeping them quiet and all this kind of. It's a decent game gameplay wise, but the theme really put it off for me. That's why it's at number 10. My number 9 is a game called Roundhouse. Now the theme of this one is actually pretty neat because it goes back to this communal living space where people would come and meet, called the Roundhouse, and there would be all kinds of different things going on, business transactions and worship and all of these other kinds of things that are happening. But it's a neat little rondelle-ish type game that is actually probably the heaviest game that EmperorS4 offers, and that's why it's at number 9, because I really like EmperorS4 for their simple yet deep games. I wasn't a huge fan of the complexity that's here. It's a great game and it flows well and it works very well. I just wasn't a huge fan of how deep it was, strategically speaking. So there is that, but it is a great game and it's the largest game that they offer. So if you are into the mid to heavier weight Euros, this is something that you probably want to look into because it does have a great theme, it has great components, and it does have good gameplay as well, from my opinion. Maybe great from yours. So check it out. That's my number 9, Roundhouse. Now, my number 9 is in a game called Planet Defenders. This is a neat little sci-fi game where you're moving your robots around using different resources and protecting planets and just doing a whole lot of stuff that was really fun, and it looked great on the table. The artwork was very inviting, not overly complex at all. It's probably a lighter mid-weight family game. It's probably still a little heavier than their normal fare, but not much at all. This is a game that you probably should want to pick up if you like those light to mid-weight family games. It's really fun. I enjoyed it a lot too. That's my number 8, Planet Defenders. My number 7 is a little bit more of a recent addition to their catalog, and that is Discovery, the Era of Voyage. I have done a review on this one, and I think that it is a neat, compact little game. I think this is going to fit into that micro game category because it does have while it does have a good number of components as far as different kinds of resource, cardboard chits and stuff like that, it fits in a box that is relatively small and it's rather portable. So I think it's a game that will fit into that category. As far as the depth is concerned, it has this engine building, resource management game feel to it that is much bigger than the game actually is. And that's probably why I want to try to shoehorn it into that micro game category because it is a very small game, but it feels a lot bigger than it actually is. So generally speaking, you're just trying to get the most points by the end of the game, and the game ends in a number of different ways, but you do so by floating around, by sailing around to different islands, picking up some resources here, dropping them off over here, and that kind of thing. It's a really neat game, and it's very simple to teach. You might want to check it out. My number 7, Discovery, the Era of Voyage. My number 6 is a game that is actually going to be released at Essen this year, and that is called Walking in Burano. Now, Walking in Burano is where you are basically trying to build up your neighborhood in the city of Burano, and you are trying to do so where you are going to be scoring different points for the different elements that are in your neighborhood. Maybe it's going to be the most people in your neighborhood. Maybe it's going to be the most flowers or other kinds of window dressings that might be in there. Maybe it's the kind of shops that are in your neighborhood. There's a number of different things that are going to score you more points, and it's just a really neat city building game, I guess you could call it, but it's on a little bit more of a micro scale than a city. It's more just a neighborhood, but it's really fun. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing the production copy soon at Essen. So that's my number 6, Walking in Burano. My number 5 is called Sorcerer Stones. Now, this one is a neat game where you are using these different resources to purchase these different artifacts, and those artifacts are going to give you a good bulk of your points, but you're also using your Taoist, I guess you could call it. I don't know exactly what it's called, and I probably sound like an idiot when I just said that, but you're using another part of the board. It has 2 boards here, and you're moving your guy around to collect these different elemental tiles that are going to give you more points during the course of the game as well. And it's a neat hand management system where you have some cards that you're using, and you use those cards to affect the board in different ways. Really enjoy this one a lot, and it does have a little bit of a analysis paralysis problem attached to it, simply because what you can do, what you can't do, can affect what other people do. And when you manipulate the board of elements over here, it can really mess up other people. So you kind of have to wait until your turn to figure out what you're going to do. Some people might not like that. It didn't bother me as much, and I really do enjoy this game. That's why it's my number 5, Sorcerer Stones. My number 4 is called Mystery of the Temples. Now, Mystery of the Temples is again, a rondelle-ish type game where you're moving around, and you can move a number of spaces each turn to land on these different spots to either gain some resources, some gems that you can use in your table, or you're going to be using those gems to kind of lock down these different sites, magical sites that are located at these different trees and temples. And you're gaining points by how many stones or how many jewels you can use to get there. It sounds convoluted, but it really isn't. It flows really well, and it looks great on the board. It has a great aesthetic appeal to it. So that's why it's my number 4, Mystery of the Temples. My number 3 is a game called Shadows in Kyoto. Now, Shadows in Kyoto is a 2-player game where you are trying to basically get one of your spy agents over to the other side of the board in these different scoring areas that are on the board, and you're using card play. You're using some special abilities that you have in order to affect where you can move these different places, and so forth and so on. And it's a really fun Stratego-esque kind of game, but it feels fresh. It doesn't feel like just Stratego. There's some other things that are going on inside of it, but it does have that feeling at its core. So it's familiar, but it also has a lot of other things going on as well. You have some variable player powers that are going on as well, and just a deck of nothing but special power cards that you're using as well. So it's really a fun game. I think you'll enjoy it. You should give it a try. Shadows in Kyoto. My number 2 is a more recent addition to their catalog, and it's called Realm of Sand. This has a Tetris-esque feel to it, but think 2D Tetris, not 3D Tetris, where you are trying to exact on your player board different kinds of patterns using Tetris-esque pieces on your player board to mimic these other building cards that are out here, the patterns that are on the building cards. And once you have affected one of those patterns, you can take that building and it's now worth points for you at the end of the game. Some of them also have hourglass symbols on them. Once we have reached 10 hourglasses or more, the game ends and we simply tabulate how many points we have in the buildings that we've constructed. Whoever has the most points is the winner. But I like this a lot because it has that spatial element to the game that I really enjoy. I like trying to arrange things in a certain type of pattern on a board and then scoring points for that. And it's really fun. This one also has a little bit of analysis paralysis attached to it, though. Not necessarily because you can't plan ahead, but because you just want to try to getting those shapes configured correctly on your board to match the bigger point buildings is difficult. And so you have to kind of build up to it. And that's where some of the extra thought processes have to come into play there. So I really do enjoy the game, though. It's very fun. I like the theme. It's unique because it's kind of like this, you're building sandcastles theme to it. And that hasn't really been done by a whole lot of games. So I like that as well. That's my number 2, Realm of Sand. Now, my number 1 is the game that kind of introduced me to EmperorS4 Games, and that is Hanamikoji. This is a 2-player tug-of-war type of game where you're trying to you're trying to influence these geishas that are out in the middle of the board, and you're trying to get them to come over to your side. And you're doing that by clever card play. Sometimes you have to use a special ability where you have to play 3 cards out. Your opponent gets to choose one of those cards, and you have to take 2. Or play 4 cards out from your hand. Your opponent gets to take 2 of them and you get the others. Or you can lock down a certain kind of card and you play it face down, and it's kind of a special reveal at the end of the round. And there's just a lot of thought, but those choices that you have to make are so excruciating, and yet it's so simple to teach, so simple to play. It's really the embodiment, I think, of the kind of game that EmperorS4 usually puts out. Very simple, yet very deep, and that's why it's my number 1, Hanamikoji. So that's about it. Those are 10 EmperorS4 games that I have played, and so I decided to rank them. You can go try them out and see if any of the descriptions have struck your fancy or anything like that. Please give them a try. I don't think you'll be too disappointed in any of these 10 games. Some of the themes might off-put you, but as far as the gameplay is concerned, I think they're all pretty solid. So that's my top 10 EmperorS4 games. We'll see you guys and gals on the flip side. Take care now.